I'm Marilyn Cabero. Would you introduce yourselves?
Sure. Pamela Arora. I'm the CEO of AAMI.
Hello, I'm Janet Prust. I am currently chair of the board of directors of AAMI.
Hi, ladies. I wanted to interview the both of you because you both have such distinguished careers and such top titles in AAMI. So amazing, so inspiring, especially since this month is Women's History Month. So my first question is, what challenges did you face during your career as a woman in the workplace?
Do you want me to start?
Go ahead, Pamela.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, as far as challenges, I will say that I've had so much support and teamwork over the years in my various roles. But one of the challenges that really comes to mind is when you start juggling when you have children. And I will offer that fathers have the same challenge,
Yeah,
but there's
of
that
course.
aspect of maybe your child's sick or you need to be there for some important, whether it's a play or a basketball game, those types of things. And I think at that time I felt a little stressed, but I will say the joy of having a child, I wouldn't trade it for the world, but it did cause some stresses and frankly a lot of teamwork because in some cases there's that give and take in the workplace as you're juggling, so to speak.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Pamela. I'm also a mother, had 2 children, worked the entire time. And it is a bit of a juggle act that you have to do. It's totally doable. You can still do a really great job raising your children as a working mother and also succeeding in your career. And there are challenges, but in reality, focusing less on what the challenges are, certainly addressing them, you have to do that, but also what are the positive aspects of that really helps your mindset to be able to do that, juggling and that management of family and work-life balance and taking good care of your family while still really doing very, very well at your profession.
How would you say, how do you juggle that aspect? Because I don't have a family yet, but I do have a bunch of nieces and nephews that I go back and forth and take care and look after. How do you juggle that aspect?
In my experience, what I did is, number one is to ensure that you're working in an environment that's going to be supportive of that, right? If your employer or whatever it is that you do, doesn't recognize the value and the importance of that, it makes it that much more difficult. So ensuring that you have that space and you have that support in your professional life to be able to do what you need to do for your personal life, I think is an important piece. I mean, we all get kind of caught in this piece of wanting to really excel in our jobs and do really, really well with that. And you have to be cognizant that you can't let that take all of your time. You need to do your job really, really well, but that doesn't mean that you have to have 14-hour work days. That doesn't mean that after, your family is goes to bed that you have to be up for another 2 or 3 hours continuing, to get ready basically for the next day. There are times that happens. But the number one thing is to ensure that you're in an environment. And one of the things that's so positive now that's happened, and it's sort of a post-COVID thing, is this acceptance in the workplace. We took a giant step forward as far as that ability to work remotely, understanding that works. And most people, many people have that opportunity now to do some remote work. That's been a tremendous boon, right, to that ability to be able to manage that. Now, not all professions can do that, right? A lot of healthcare professions, you need to be there full time, especially if you are a clinician and delivering that healthcare. But it's looking for those environments that are going to be supportive of your work-life balance, I believe.
Absolutely. I will offer that prior to my daughter being born, I was traveling constantly for work. So it'd be like 90% on the road. And when I knew I was going to have the family, we were making some choices around what kind of position I could go into. And to Janet's point, some positions will allow for that and others won't. And I think people have to look for that balance. But it's okay. And it's one of those things where that challenge is also a huge opportunity for learning as well. So I am really grateful for the remote capability that really has been enhanced because of COVID. But I will offer that those models worked before, but we were honing them. during COVID. And I will offer that it's causing a lot of organizations to think differently about how to get that balance, which is encouraging.
I think you have to also understand what is your measure of success. And your measure of success in your personal life is just as important, if maybe not more important, than your measure of success in your professional life. So I encourage women to think of it in that way. It's not just I'm really good at my job, I've got my promotion, I'm recognized. But if you're not successful in your personal life, you won't have the level of life satisfaction that you really need and should have. So just keep that balance in mind, is that you have goals and successes in each of these aspects of your life, and your job should not outweigh what you really need to accomplish and what you view as your goals and successes in your personal life.
I absolutely agree, and I think that AAMI especially has really done an amazing job. I feel like with Pamela coming along especially, you've really introduced a balance in lifestyle, and I really appreciate that.
That's wonderful to hear.
So next question, did you have a mentor or a sponsor for your career?
So I didn't have a formal one. I've been a mentor. I've been in formal mentor programs where I'm the mentor, and I had a few mentees. But I didn't. But I had some really, really good managers early on in my career. And I learned from them. I emulated how they interfaced with people, how they managed various, job expectations and priorities. There were a couple of female, but there were also a couple of male, managers that I had that really helped me understand not only mostly the way to treat people, a little less about how to do your job, but it was really how do you interface with people in the workplace. I've spent time in a clinical environment. I've spent time in an industry, medical device manufacturer, which was the bulk of my career, in quite a few different roles, actually. And it was really not so much of the techniques of the job. It was how you develop relationships with people, how you work on teams, and then eventually how you lead those teams and how you lead people. And it's been really valuable. So my point is that you don't necessarily have to have a formal mentor. What I found in those programs where I was the mentor is putting some of the structure and the boundaries around it. I'm not sure it benefited the people as much as having, just a really, really good relationship. So my suggestion with that is that even if you don't have a formal mentor, look at the people who you admire and look at the people who do a good job of bringing people together, making a nice work environment, achieving your goals, the deliverables, producing the work, and watch them and see those parts that you can potentially emulate.
I was about to ask that because I don't have a formal mentor. I do have amazing managers that I do look up to. So what do you think, Pamela?
I'll offer similar to Janet. I've been a formal mentor many times, but as far as myself, it's been informal. And I will offer that the nuggets of what works is in so many different places of your life and your interactions.
Absolutely.
When you see, you might even go to the grocery store and see how people interact, and you realize, they really brought out the best in that other person. So I will offer, be creative and open-minded about how you look at mentorship. I also think that this all-or-nothing formal aspect of mentorship, if you take a more informal approach, you can really hone in on what an individual is great at and ask them about that, and they're always happy to share. The other thing I'm going to say about mentorship is you can be a mentor too, informally. Sometimes it'll be formalized, but when you're good at picking out the best in other people and really encouraging that, that's when you start to foster teamwork and these great relationships that lead to very high-performing teams. And when you have a culture of that aspect of, I'm going to recognize what's great in you and encourage you, they encourage you as well, it ends up really creating a environment that people just thoroughly enjoy working in.
Yeah, it's almost a domino effect,
Really?
right? You have a good leader. It doesn't necessarily have to be the leader of the group. Excuse me. You can just be somebody in a particular group that, behaves and kind of models a certain type of behavior, and then the other people very often will start to emulate that and say, yeah, that's how this group works, and you develop these really high-performing teams that are not only really fun to be part of, but you take that as a learning into other aspects of your work in the future.
How would you say is a good way to keep these relationships? Like, you may not be at your workplace with your current manager or mentor. Yeah. How would you keep that relationship going if you're moving outside the company?
Reach out, right? 2 words, just continue to reach out, right? You can't, don't sit and expect someone to reach out to you. Some will, right? The good ones will, but take it upon yourself to continue to reach out. If there's people that you'd like to continue to have a relationship, texts are great, right?
They sure are.
People don't change their phone numbers very often. They change emails, but they don't change phone numbers very often. But make a special effort, right, to keep that relationship going, keep track of where they are. Lunches once in a while, you move away, there's opportunities usually to kind of cross paths again. And just continue to reach out always.
Absolutely. I also think associations can help with that. I'll give Amy as an example. When you're in a certain discipline and you kind of hone into associations around that discipline, you're going to find that you're able to stay in touch with a number of folks that you've enjoyed working with in the community. So I encourage that, but I agree with Janet. I keep tabs on those mobile phone numbers because I really reach out to people quite regularly. Right. Sometimes I worked with them decades ago, but you'll find that they'll have insights to share.
Yeah. And, I'll pick up on your comment about associations. Absolutely. Join the associations that are within your particular professional area. You might have to pay for it yourself, but it's so worthwhile to be able to, for your own personal development, to be able to keep those relationships going. And again, to be able to see those people, who are leaders in that group and develop those relationships, but how have they done it, right? And observe how they've done it and what they get involved in, and then see if that's right for you.
Great. There are times, because I'm still pretty in the middle of my career, I've had past managers who I've missed, and there have been times where I just felt scared to talk to them again and reach out to them over on LinkedIn or whatever. So it's good to know that I can just reach out to them and I don't have to be afraid.
Yeah. Right. So I'm gonna tell you what's on the top of my little Post-it note here. Number one thing is believe in yourself, right?
Absolutely.
Don't doubt yourself, right? You know who you are. Just believe in yourself. I have sort of a motto when I have to, what's my favorite quote, or you have to share your life experience as a team building activity. It's believe in yourself, right? If you can do it, you believe that you can do it, and then you'll get it done. If you don't believe you can do it, or you let the doubt kind of creep in, it makes it that much harder. So just believe in yourself. Say, I can do it.
Talk from you.
Yeah.
You need to do a TED Talk.
Yeah, that one, I agree with you. It was on my list, too. You are powerful and need to believe in yourself. Yep. And then I said, don't discount yourself either. Because I think sometimes people will start something, and then they start to have these nagging doubts. And it's sometimes you'll have someone who will encourage you, and that's great when that happens, but many times you're going to have to encourage yourself.
Right.
So keep that in mind. You can do it.
You can do it. And don't listen to people who tell you that you can't. You just have to tune that out, right? Whether it's your family, it might be somebody very, very close to you, but it's your life, it's your career. You need to believe in yourself.
So, looking back at your careers, is there anything you would have done differently?
For me, not so much differently. I just would emphasize that I wouldn't change a thing, but the open-mindedness whenever there was pivots of changes and transitions was incredibly important. Sometimes fear will come in at those points in your life, and I will offer that being open-minded has always allowed me to have even more challenge and fun in my career and work with high-performing teams. And if you lean into those changes, I think you're going to find that life just has so many interesting things in store for you.
What I would have done differently, I'm not sure I had the understanding at that point in time to do things differently. But looking back at now is I would have, say, earlier in my career understood that I really need to focus on the things that I can control and less on what I really didn't have control about. So, for example, within an organization, very often there's some political challenges of who's doing what, and I really paid more attention. I spent more time and energy on that than I would have right now. You don't have to be involved in everything, especially if you really don't have any control or influence over that. I think that's the thing that I would have changed earlier. I would have worked a little less. I had, when I mentioned earlier, I mean, these really, really long days and up till 2 a.m. and up really early, and that was part of what I assumed was the expectation for me. It really wasn't the expectation. So it was really recognizing clearly what do you have to deliver in your role, and sometimes going above and beyond does get recognized. It's not a sure path right, for your success. It's doing your job really well, interfacing with people really well, and ensuring that you're a positive, always being a positive person, again, believing what you can do, is much more important than the total number of hours. Now, I'm not saying you don't have to put in your full work week, or you don't have to work hard. You do have to work hard, but just that balance, again, is it doesn't necessarily mean the number of hours that you work in a day or a week does not equate to the success or value that you have in the job or can have in the job. So it's really understanding what you can control and what you can't. And you can control the number of, hours that you work. So, excessive hours doesn't necessarily mean success in a job. And so that would be my advice.
I think it's wonderfully stated. I will underscore that sometimes work wins out for very short periods of time, and sometimes home wins out for very short periods of time as far as needing to be over the top, and it's appropriate. That balance, it really does get down to confidence, and that's an excellent point, because I think people always say more is more. In this instance, it's not, and it doesn't always translate to productivity either. You can spend a lot of hours. I have seen over the years people get burnt out, and that's something that you have to kind of self-regulate as well.
You make an absolutely good point, especially with burnout. I think the pandemic really showed that workers today, we need that balance. Absolutely. I wish I had that especially when I was younger. When I was first starting out my career, I did not know that there was a balance. I thought you just worked, and you rest later and sleep later after the promotion. I really wish I had that guidance when I was younger. So tell me what you hope to see in the change of the workplace for women.
Yeah, what I would emphasize is more focus on STEM opportunities. The Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that women make up about 28% of the workforce in STEM. So that's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And young women today, when you see them very early in their school careers, they are not necessarily seeing themselves as being capable of filling those types of roles. I would just like to see folks encouraged, young ladies encouraged in that direction. Those are high-paying positions, and we would like to get the diversity in those STEM kind of opportunities. So that's one thing I'd like to see change over time, and that's a community aspect.
Yeah, I would add to that, Pamela, too, that there are, traditionally women professions, right, that we're seeing right now are in a crisis state, and those would be particularly in healthcare. I'm going to say nursing, but it's beyond nursing. It's other auxiliary roles, and including physicians
and HTM
and HTMs, absolutely. And there's been a nice growth in women entering in that profession. It's really great. And the other one is teachers, right, and child care workers, and that. Both of those areas are really under a lot of pressure right now. I think what needs to change is more recognition of two things. One is, pay and benefits needs to come up in both of those those areas. But again, more recognition that there needs to be that balance, right? You need to be able to support those individuals and those kinds of professions, and you need to be able to recognize the value that they are providing to our society and to our culture. And I don't think we're quite there yet. I think COVID has really brought to highlight, particularly in the clinical environment, and I guess teaching as well, right? Is the challenges that we're faced and the amount of personal time and effort that they and sacrifice, right, and risk that they put into that. So I would really like to see, those positions and how they're treated in the workplace and how they're recognized to be able to continue to evolve and heighten, because they're so critically important to all of our society and our own personal health and well-being.
I
Absolutely.
agree.
So what advice would you give women today?
So I've mentioned a few things like that. So one of them is believe in yourself. I've always been a big believer also in setting goals. You set your personal goals and you set your professional goals, and that once you and put a timeline on them, right, a milestone on them. And once you achieve those, set a new set of goals. All right. Earlier in my career, it was more, okay, I want to be promoted to this position by the time I'm 30, right? It's those kinds of goals. But as you get farther in your career, it tends to be much more as, I really want to learn about this new area, right? I really want to be more involved in, community organizations. I really want to be able to mentor be a good mentor to people. There's a variety of different things, and it changes over your career depending on where you're at. But, without setting goals, there's two things. Is you don't know what you're working towards. You also don't ever know when you achieved it, right, if you haven't actually set a goal. So I think that's a really, really important piece of advice, and that keep them moving, keep those goals moving, right? And if you get farther down the path and you decide, okay, I don't really want to do that goal anymore, fine. Go ahead and switch gears and then change something. I think it's another piece of advice is to make yourself memorable in a certain way, right? Whether it's how you do your job, very often it's kind of how nice and positive you are, right? And that's another really important piece. I mean, be positive in your interactions. I came from a very large family of a lot of brothers, and so it forced me to be, sometimes I'd come across as being aggressive. And that didn't work earlier in my career, and I think it was because it wasn't the expectation for women to be, that aggressive. It was sort of okay for men to be like that, but it was seen as a very negative thing. And once it was brought to my attention, I was kind of shocked. But what it came across as is that more is really that I wasn't being nice, right? So I think you can be both. I think you can be strong. I think you can be assertive. But being nice and also always being kind to people and involving people and recognizing them is a really, really important part of developing those relationships, and also it makes you feel really, really good. Volunteer, right, to lead, a really important part of how you get ahead in your career. It's not waiting for somebody to promote you, but you volunteer for a project, for a task, even if it's like organizing, the year-end celebration, or it's maybe, coming up with the idea for a new project and you volunteer to lead that team, even if it's sort of an ad hoc thing. There's lots of opportunities to show your capabilities and what you can do by creating something for yourself. So volunteering for a project is really important. And then the other part is, always be present, be engaged in what you're doing, right? There's a piece of being notable, but another way that is how you do that is be present. So we're in a meeting and I'm paying attention and I'm involved and I'm engaging in the conversation. We're here this week at a standards week, and so many people just observe, but those that are engaged and speaking are the ones that we're actually not only getting the work done, but the rest of the people are looking at them and saying, yeah, they're pretty effective on how they do that. Maybe I want to work with that person. And, to reach out, help out, check out, right, all of those things, and always be kind. Always be really kind to people.
I think that's a great one. I'll add, follow your heart. I do find that sometimes people get in a treadmill towards a certain career direction and feel that they have to continue in that direction when their heart's pulling them in another direction. Follow your heart. And it's never too late to go in a different direction if that's what really inspires you. To Janet's point, as far as being present, be heard. Your voice, you need to find your voice, you need to be heard. It doesn't mean that you need to dominate a meeting, but at the same time, you're going to have unique ideas, and those need to be shared. but run your own race. You don't have to compete with somebody else. You're going to have different thoughts and skills. Run your own race. And then this one I always give as advice is your biggest problems out there are the biggest opportunities. I always say that really your career advances come to you on a platter, but it's the platter that everybody else is running the opposite direction because it's like, ooh, that's a mess. If you take on those big problems, you end up getting wonderful opportunities, a lot of career advancement. So whenever you see something messy, that big, hairy issue, in those instances, run towards it because that is your big opportunity. And then lastly, bring out the gifts in others, because what ends up happening is high-performing teams, it's about you bringing your gifts forward, but when you recognize the gifts of others, that's where the teamwork and collaboration occurs, and it's phenomenal. I think Janet had a fabulous list, and I was trying not to repeat anything that she had there, but that would be my advice to folks.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, recognizing others reflects really well on you. That's not why you do it, right? You do it because you truly feel that's an important thing to recognize, but it also reflects very well on you when you can recognize, the skills and the things that others do really well. So it's not all about yourself, right? Part of being successful in your career and leading people, even if it's not directly that you're supervising people, you're still a leader, right? By emulating some of these things and recognizing other people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's great. I would like to add to that. For women out there, my advice would be to know your worth, because there are going to be people who will assume some things about you, and only you know yourself, and no one can put a label on you except yourself. I want to thank you ladies so much. I learned a lot. I felt very mentored. Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time out of your days to talk with me.
Thank you.
Yeah,
this has been fun.
Yeah, thank you.